It's live. Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning for our work session. We are officially called to order, although we are not officially calling the meeting to order. So, thank you all for being here as we discuss proposed real estate transactions between the schools and the city. We are live streaming this, so understand that and be cognizant of that when we speak. If you don't mind, speak boldly and clearly, because if not, we will definitely hear about it in about 5 minutes. So I will turn things over to Dr. Murphy to get us kicked off. Our first item is the city's request for parcels of land and right-of-ways.
Yeah, well, thank you. Let me, first of all, just express my appreciation for this group of important people who come to the table this morning. As we've all acknowledged, we're delighted with the working relationship we have with our city, and so thank you to all of our city folks and our folks who are at the table this morning. We did have a good number of questions that remained after our presentation last, Tuesday, I believe. And so our purpose today is just to come back to the table, make sure that we are clear. We did make some requests as it related to the power lines coming through our property, and I think there's been maybe a proposed adjustment to those power lines. So perhaps, Jim, it's appropriate at this point to let you tell us what has changed as a result of our meeting from the other night.
Sure, Dr. Murphy, thank you. We went back and as we talked about Tuesday, one of the concerns that the schools had was the way the power line kind of looped through the undeveloped portion of the property. And we went back and asked the power company if we could revise that alignment of the power line and more closely hug. It's going to be a little difficult. I sent a file out. I don't know if anybody's got it. I was hoping they could put it up on the board, but yeah, okay. More closely hug the proposed new property line after potentially the schools would donate almost 2 acres right there on the eastern side of the new sports complex. That takes the power line out of looping through undeveloped portions of the property. For those that can't see it, maybe you do.
We have a few extra copies if anyone wants one.
Yes, start to read. There we go. There we go. We also expanded the view a little bit. I think one of the concerns was it was a little hard to orient the drawing that we had last time. So we expanded the view a little bit so you could kind of see where we were. This is Trace Crossings Elementary School right here. You have Hoover Hall, the bus barn, and the high school over here. I don't have the old proposed line for the power line on here, but the old proposed line, the power line, came down here and kind of looped around and then came down here and tied somewhere in this neighborhood. What we asked the power company is if we could reroute that line right here. This is the almost 2 acres of additional property that we're asking for, and come down and hug that eastern property line, go back and hug that, and then tie into their existing line at that location, thereby reopening up that undeveloped property for you. Early indications are they will be able to do that. We don't have it definitively, but as soon as we do, what we would propose is that they reproduce easements associated with that alignment there and get them back to the school board for execution.
Any questions?
The easement, Jim, will be 15 foot either side of the property line.
Either side of their alignment, yes. Center center line of their line. In other words, if they, wherever they end up putting these poles in that alignment, it'll be 15 feet either side of that.
But you're going to consider the property line between Hoover Board of Education and the city of Hoover as being the center line, so that we've got
That's what I would.
half. Does that also include a possible 10-foot adjustment if they need it beyond the 30, or is that 30 period?
As far as I know, it's 30.
Trying to keep from cutting more trees.
I understand.
I mean,
I understand. I don't know of any fluff that they have in there. I understand it's just 15 feet either side of their center line.
That's what they asked for.
their center line, or
I mean, that is.
They got 10
Yeah.
feet additional in their contract that they can, if they wanna add another line, they can add 10 feet on either side of the easement.
Okay, well, if you're opposed to that, then I would suggest that we redline through that and take that back to them.
Yes.
Another thing from your perspective and the city's perspective and the school district's perspective is they build lines and require easements. You'll notice in the easement now, they include communications, whether the optic fiber and other things. If you, the city, or us, the school board, ever has any need to use that easement, that right of way, that pole line, those poles for tax purposes, it needs to probably be in that easement.
Okay.
Cable TV and Bellside or home companies, they've got attachment agreements already in place, but you never know when you might need a communication line from one end of the park to the other.
Absolutely. So creating the easement actually gives you some flexibility.
But
Well,
doesn't
it
just
does,
have to be bound.
now, it's a one-sided deal right now, but I'm saying you need to ask them about that.
Okay.
If attaching to their poles is always a problem, if you want to do it without that easement.
Quick question for you, Ms. Cooper. I think Ms. Presley mentioned that it's something the contract states that if they need to put on a line, it would require so much. Is that typical with you working the fire? Is that typical what they ask for? And can they always come back if there's a need for?
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're really respectful of everyone's property. They'll come back and ask you, but typically if they needed to put another line on the same direction, they would put a tall pole and underbuild it, perhaps,
Yeah,
or go to bigger wire size. But yeah, they're great to work with.
when do you expect to hear back from them, Mr. Westover?
I would expect next week. It's just a matter of, I think if everybody is in agreement that this is an acceptable alignment, then we can lock down everything.
It's not out of the ordinary to tell them what they need to know the information.
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, it's not hard. I mean, seriously.
Tim, let me clarify. So the easement 15 feet either side, you said of their line, is it 15 feet either side of the common property line between Hoover and Hoover City Schools?
Well, Mr. Kelly, let me say, it's going to be 15 feet either side of where their line ends up being. Now, what we're establishing or trying to establish is that that line will be on that property line. Right now, when we talk to them, they're saying, well, somebody's gonna have to survey that line in.
Okay.
You know, they're not opposed to wherever it ends up being, it just is a matter of coordinating the two
No,
sides.
what he's asking is a very good question, because typically they'll put the line, it's 15 feet either side of the center line. So if you got three
Correct.
conductors, and typically they'll put the pole on the corner of the lot line. So, in other words, what he's asking, I think, is that if the center line actually traverses the actual property line, dead center, is the easement gonna encroach 15 feet on our property and 15 feet on your property?
That's what I would anticipate ending up being, yes.
And if there's a difference, you would let us know? I mean, when do you expect them to tell you?
I mean, yeah, as soon as we get everything locked down, we'll be happy to come back and it's anticipated that it'll be on that property.
I think so too. I'm not,
Okay.
Well, last question, Ms. Cooper. Once they complete it, I guess we can get as-bills back to really kind of know where it's what.
We can certainly do
I
that.
mean, it's for the school system file.
Sure.
Yeah, well, what they'll want you to survey the property line.
Right.
And they come out there, they'll stake the pole.
That's exactly right. And then our surveyors will go out and be able to identify where that stake is. Then we may have to go back out and actually figure out where they actually put the pole. You know?
How does this work timeframe wise with not allowed to clear anymore? Well, I mean, will this not take place until next fall?
not exactly clear on that. The utilities may be exempted from that. We're a little unclear.
It's amazing how that happens, isn't it?
Jim, the only other option would be to, rather than taking that line down the center line, would be to have that come in, on this piece of property that if the board chooses to give to the city, come in 15 feet, and then you clearly wouldn't come in on us at all. The 15 feet would simply take it to the property line then.
Well, let me say this, that we've established those proposed property lines based upon our grading limits. So we would hope that we could put the poles on those property lines rather than trying to encroach back onto ours, because I think then you're gonna put them into, or potentially put them into our grading limits, which is exactly what we're trying to get them out of right now, is out of the way of our construction. So we feel like it's much more appropriate, much safer from a construction standpoint, having to relocate them twice to put them on the property line.
And another thought, if the school district ever tends to access that power line for service to the parcel of land to the right of it, if the entire conductor, all the lines on their property, you're gonna get easement from them to tap into that, come back to your property.
The clearing limits that have already taken place, they don't stop at the property line, correct? Don't they extend past the property line
Some of them do, yes.
20 feet or 30 feet or so?
Some of them.
So it's very possible that this could go in an area that's already been cleared.
Potentially, yes.
What determines the additional 10 feet if they need it? It's just written in there that way.
Yeah, I don't really know.
It says if they need it, if they need the property, if it needs to be moved for the construction or improvement of a public road or highway, is where that 10 feet kicks in, according to their instrument.
But you're gonna ask them to remove that, right?
I'm happy to.
There wouldn't be, there's no public road or highway right there, so. And there will be along the tail end of that, there won't be, which should be good.
And the other is to have an addendum or additional statement that allows us access should we need to use those lines for, any other utilities for us.
And see if they can give you some kind of attachment provision on that, communication attachment provision. And that's what they're asking us for, quick communication lines.
Any other questions on the power line easement relocation? No more questions on power line relocation? All right, excellent. Thank you guys for working on getting that moved. We'll move on to the road parcels now. And for clarification's sake for this meeting, we will call the road from the parking lot to Hoover the North Road. And we will call the road in front of the bus barn the East Road. Because we'll get confused on this, talking about the new roads. We will open the floor for comments or questions.
We have, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I believe we've had some additional conversation about the parking area in front of the operations building on the East Road. And I believe, thank you, Tim, for going out and visiting with Tracy. I believe there's a way for us to relocate that parking so it's not right on the front of the operations building, which was going to compromise us in terms of trying to make some turns with those larger buses. So by removing those parking lots from the front and moving them to the side, and moving those parking spaces, that will help us, and it's my understanding there was a lot of utilities on that corner that will also be beneficial to the city, not to get into those utilities there in the front. So, Tracy, you were very comfortable with the relocation?
Yes, Mr. Westside came out yesterday and we looked around, we've got an area in the back.
Okay.
that'll be
So
a lot
off the
better.
front to the back.
To the east of the current,
I was trying to think of that direction,
east of the current building.
Yes,
east of the current.
that's gonna work out well for us also.
One thing that we all need to understand, I think this entire road, the construction of this road, and I'm going to also assume the sale of the property for this road is all contingent upon the current proposal that is on the table for the Trace Crossings PUD. Is that correct? Or if that does not pass, and I assume that'll be on the 12th, is that correct? That it will come up to the full council
It's
for
on
vote?
the
The 5th. And so if that does not pass full council, then is this road dead and gone at that point?
No, it is related but not directly dependent upon that case. So there are 2 or 3 ways that this property could still come in. The property for the residential development and the road could still come in. The easiest way is if that case comes to completion,
Sure.
but there are a couple of other options between the landowner and the purchaser.
Okay. And this road, it only shows it to the edge of our property, but the plan is still for that road to extend to the upper entrance to Bumpus Middle School on Fleming Parkway.
Does it align directly with the entrance or is it?
Yes, it does.
Does it? Okay, thanks. Yeah, so the whole idea behind this east road, as it benefits the community at large, is to provide an kind of internal connector solution along with the Stadium Trace to, what did we say, North Road? Both of these roads, is to provide some kind of better interior circulation for the Trace Crossings campus as a whole. School campuses and residential area and potential commercial sports complex and everything. So we definitely want to provide a clear access pathway between the 2 schools, which of course will also serve any future potential residential development there between the road and the river. Will help serve the sports complex and give us another alternative for draining traffic from the major event.
You said if this doesn't pass on the 5th, there's some other options out there. Do those options change the layout of the subdivisions or the current proposed road structure that is there? But I guess the question and some concerns that have been posed to me is that this road could possibly extend all the way, who knows how far. If it got tweaked to the east just a little bit, it could be it could miss our property and continue on to Lake Wilburn and who knows from there.
That's not been an element of the discussion up until now. The options that I was referring to would be the options for the proposed purchaser, which is not the city, to still acquire land from U.S. Steel, who's the current landowner. So a redesign or extension of that road would not be part of this. And it's not, there would be no budget for that at this point in time. So all we're talking about in terms of this this east road is what you see and what you've been presented so far in any current iteration of the plan.
Okay.
Now, 20 years from now,
Well, I'm sure we
none of us
understand
will
that.
be here. So we don't know what those folks will do, but as presented to you right now is the only way that we perceive this road being built under the current master plan.
And what would the time frame then be on this road, since it may or may not pass council on the 5th and it may have to go back and come back? So it could be, it's not as, the north road is in, or the clearing's done for the north road. So it's definitely a go and will be done by SEC tournament next year. I'm guessing that's our deadline on everything up there. So by the end of school next year, the north road will be installed and functional.
18th,
We're delivering the baseball field for sure by SEC baseball. whether the actual road connection is made by SEC baseball or not through there, we aren't.
We would like to have it.
We want it,
Be-
we're
that would-
pushing for it.
yeah.
But I guess the point I was making is it's in the works. It's gonna happen very soon, where this one we still may or may not happen.
Correct, the North Road, we're leaning very far forward to try to get that as an enhancement to the sports complex. And to come online when the first baseball field is delivered, and that contractually is 2018.
Okay.
So we'd like for the road to accompany that. The South Road, I believe will happen, depending on what happens at council, it could take a longer path.
Okay.
And so when we get into those other options for land acquisition, those timelines would be yet to be determined.
All right. At council meeting on the 5th, is the annexation of this property part of what's currently being presented, or is that two separate
No,
pieces?
that's all traveling as one case.
Okay. And anybody from the public, feel free to comment if you have any questions.
My thoughts, Mr. Westover, and you know this from the time I've been on the board and probably before, is that I am not in favor of vacating these roads, deeding them over, or whatever the terminology is for access to the roads in this. And the concern is simply the safety of the children in front of this school. We don't know how much traffic, I know the disadvantage, we're calling it the East Road, what could cause traffic to come by this high school. And that's the only concern I have. We have no plans to build, there's no use for that road. We just want to maintain the ability in an emergency situation to block that road. It could be a lost child, it could be a tornado evac, it could be something totally going on different outside the property that all of a sudden traffic's egressing by our school. So I right now will not support vacating those roads.
I think as it pertains to safety, I want to ask Chief Durgis to join us this morning. We definitely want to have a vigorous conversation. There's no doubt that safety of the students in those schools is everybody's priority.
We know that.
And I think sometimes, and the Chief case has some case studies and some thoughts from his long tenure of experience. Sometimes we think about security and facility hardening, but sometimes we don't consider what that means for that second, third, and fourth wave of help that's coming. So if it'd be all right, I'd like to let Chief address a little bit of that.
Sure. I'm not somebody that's really in favor of blocking any roads, especially near a school. My concern, of course, is the vulnerability of an actual structure itself. And I think that we've had a very, very, very positive working relationship with the school board, with the principals of the schools. We've done site surveys over the years. We've made recommendations. And again, we've done everything we can to harden the security of the actual structure itself. Again, I'm not that concerned about getting there, because if we need to get there, we want to be able to get there obviously as quickly as we can. I think under current conditions, I think that all the schools are in very good shape as far as security-wise, from the recommendations that we've all made and that have been done over the years. And again, I understand what you're saying about being able to close different things, but again, as far as we're concerned, we would like to have access as quickly as we can get places. And I think when you look at some of the studies that have done in different places where there have been concerns and things that have taken place around the country, I don't want to be specific about it, but sometimes access to those places have been a concern to other police departments and haven't been able to get there maybe as quickly as they wanted to. So again, I don't see under the current conditions really doing anything with those roads, and blocking the roads would really enhance anything for us, to be frank about it.
Well, it's certainly not insinuating block it from you. We hope that any time it happens, as an SR road, your officers on the other. Well, I'm not talking about a gate, something permanent. I'm just saying if something came up, a barricade, a wooden barricade, somebody could drive through for that matter, but just to simply, I'm concerned about what's gonna go on in the commercial area down there. We have no clue. I understand it wouldn't make sense for a commercial business to turn and go east and north just to go around and get up, but we don't know. So it's how much traffic potentially could be on that road going right in front of that high school.
And I think in that scenario, you'd have chief staff working
Absolutely, it won't imply we try to block the police out, my gosh, we'll set you up a residence there.
So, you know, you say you're not thinking about a gate. If there's not a physical barricade,
That's probably my fault for talking to Mr. Westone. I use the term gate because I think at Kirkland we actually did put a gate up for, and we've never shut it. We've never shut Jaguar other than when Spain Park and Hoover play a ball game for traffic. So
right? And those
it's
are
not a
kind of-
controlled situation, it's a safety issue. So have we ever had an issue where, hey, they block the road, we can't, to my knowledge, no.
No. Which is to my point, do we really need the gate, I guess?
I'm with you. We don't know.
Is where I'm.
Well,
We don't, we haven't today.
let me make this statement, and I hear on both sides, I hear what Kelly is saying. Right now it's a controlled traffic pattern, with the high school, there's gonna be kids or, external users, with schools coming from games or you name it to the current place. Long term, that none of us will all be on the council or on the school board, if that becomes somewhat of a thoroughfare, bringing additional traffic through that, it has no relationship to the school system itself. Will they having a process or some written process or something in place with the police department and the school be something that's beneficial, with that much traffic coming that way? Because I know that the school system may lock down for code red and yellow and it's certain things, and that is contributing to the Hoover police being involved with it. So maybe having extra discussion, extra controls in place, cameras on the outskirts, I don't know, will make it a lot more easier since that's a control area now versus long term, if that makes sense.
you know, that's actually. Go ahead.
I think you could easily, and I shouldn't say, I think, Mr. Calder, Chief Dirks, you'll have to weigh in on this, but I think there could be signs that put up that said no through traffic between 7:15 a.m. and 9 o'clock a.m. and then again, you know, to keep traffic from coming through there when school is being taken in and letting out, and you know, but I don't know how else you could, you know, those signs are there for honest folks, I guess, and if you wanna go through there, you're gonna go through there, but I don't know if that would help or not, or if we could even do that.
I was thinking along the same lines of a use solution, which I think might address Mr. Kelly's concerns, where the school system retained the authority to take the measures they needed to take, but we had a protocol, which I think is kind of where Eric's going. And right, wrong, or indifferent, the mayor, chief, and I all come from a background of worst case scenario, and I think that aligns with your thought process.
Safety, that's all.
And that would give you guys the flexibility you would need to take the measures that you would need to take. And with the relationship that we have, again, I think that would be a hand in glove decision with the staff that would be on the campus at the time.
That's all my consideration is. I mean, we're not gonna say no plans to build, we're not gonna put a convenience store out there, we're not trying to control it. We know you're not gonna do that. It's safety, so if there's some protocol, the superintendent should certainly be involved in her thoughts as what situations would come up. We work fantastic with the police. That's not in question, and our fire and medics, so that's not the question. You understand, I won't repeat myself, but certainly something to where if it need be, that road could be stopped, shut down in certain situations. Not to inconvenience the public or business or.
With everybody's full knowledge and understanding, special event or an emergent event,
Yeah.
but where everybody's communicating and everybody knows where the control point's gonna be and how to get access.
And I think Mr. Bradford may have about, at any one time, about 35 or 40 really nice, bright yellow barricades that we can put across that road if we needed to,
Put 'em
pretty
anywhere.
quickly.
Put them anywhere you want to put them. They're portable.
Get back to Mr. Kelly's concern about safety and blocking roads. Given the amount of traffic that potentially flows there at any given point in time, it's gonna be self-blocking to begin with, potentially if an incident occurs. And to Alan's point about worst case scenarios and all, where's the nearest helipad? Is there a helipad planned for any of the force complex or anything nearby the high school?
They have a program where we will actually give them GPS coordinates and they'll come out and pre-clear, not prepared, code approved, developed helipads, but they'll pre-clear landing areas. And so that's part of our thought process as the sports complex evolves, is to give them various points around the entire campus where they can use.
That'd be helpful for everyone because You're gonna be self-blocking anyway for traffic.
That's right, that's exactly right. And I believe, Mayor, do they, I would think they already have something in Hoover High School per se. We just need to add points for the sports complex, and that would take them adjacent to your parking
Yeah,
facility.
I'm not aware of that. Certainly, we don't want to limit turf field.
They would love that. That's a pretty nice landing.
Mr.
Not
Rice,
really.
That's a good point.
Mr. Rice, with that being said, and maybe better too, with really written controls on that, to probably like, police do, active shooting protocol, example, and maybe when it gets developed that that car type, drill goes through, to make everyone feel comfortable with the process.
Absolutely.
But it is just for discussion, y'all, there is sort of a fundamental question that really goes beyond the question of whether there's a gate or whether we have those sort of protocols in place, and it's really about the nature of the road. And whether the road is a public right of way like Highway 31, or whether it's a road that is private but is permitted, where we permit the public to use it in association with the public uses that are there. And as I think through that, there are pros and cons on both sides, but that's really the fundamental question, because if it's public, then your ability to obviously close it off, the restrictions are imposed in a different manner than if it's not. So the roads around Spain Park, for example, we have more latitude as a school board to determine how those roads are used. Once they're dedicated to the public, it's a completely new ballgame. So that sort of dialogue, I really think, even though there's been a focus on gates, which gates can come into play, obviously, it's really more about what those roads are, and whether there's some kind of control retained. Mr. Kelly just asked, can you have like a tenancy in common in a road? Well, it depends, of course, on the nature of the road. If it's a public road and it's intended as a public thoroughfare, then we obviously have to go through the ordinance process, and the types of limitations you can impose on it are going to be very different than if it's not. So that's something that I think we can work together to try to figure out what the best way to handle that is to accomplish the objectives of both the school board and the city.
I think we
Does that make sense?
absolutely, it does, and I think we're absolutely sensitive to the unknowns, the future unknowns. I don't think that we have a real sticking point about whether the road's dedicated or whether it remains private. I think our concern is just that there be a protocol in place, because when there's a future board and future city administration and things are happening, south and west of this location, and I don't know that we want to do anything to dilute that future board's ability to say that's a lot more traffic than we're comfortable with. But I think the public safety aspect is where we want to go. I don't know that the public or private status of the road is really a sticking point for us. It's just that whatever it falls under, we'd like to be sure that we maintain that linkage to how you guys would implement your authority to close it if you had to do that.
Just so I understand, Buccaneer Drive right now though is private, right?
Now, is Learning Lane, is it private?
It
or
is.
public?
It's private.
It is private.
So I think what we would want, or just speaking from my point of view, would be to maintain the privacy of that, but certainly clearly articulated and understood protocol about when and if
I
it
think that's what we're
closes.
looking for. Yes, ma'am.
Perfect.
And so the access road that goes by Hoover Hall and the bus barn, the request is to deed that. And I take it, in doing so, the intent of the city would be to make that a publicly dedicated road, or because that connects with, obviously, up with Buccaneer.
I think the current proposal is to deed both of the roads, the north and the east road will be deeded.
Well, let me make a statement right here. Regardless if it's deeded or not, it doesn't make the continual Buccaneer Road a public road.
We don't know that. That could be legal questions
If
too,
there's a question,
whether you're getting them to a certain point and denying access, I don't know, then we've got two lawyers sitting here at that point.
I guess the biggest thing, let's say that's not the case, and once it gets to the intersection point, it's private. It's private to a point, and it's facilities of the school system. When it comes to, asphalt replacement, things of that nature, the city will be responsible for continuing a path and putting on a maintenance plan to fix all of that versus
It's dedicated.
if it's dedicated.
Or if it's our property.
Yeah, so,
And maybe that's the sticking point, is that they're calling it a right of way
right.
rather than just a parcel.
But getting to Mr. Kelly's point, if it, I don't know that, so I would love to know if it does tie in, does it make all of that public property? But if not, then that's gonna be a private road regardless, even if they, at that point, that you have the, right to kind of do what you wanna do anyway.
This
I
is
do,
the
I do,
asking for, you
I
still
do.
have a stopping point here. Is there-
It depends on really if you don't dedicate a road, it can be dedicated by prescription, essentially, or by use by the public. And there are ways to, we have these roads all over the place. You guys actually had, April's here, you guys had a case, Hugh Daniel Drive was one of those types of situations where the public essentially obtained use by prescription or by use, and there wasn't the kind of necessarily dominion over it that, according to a judge, that indicated it was private. So yeah, I mean, you can put up signs there that say, from this point forward, the road's private, or you can impose certain restrictions on it but if the public uses it, I mean, if we end up, punching in a through road that goes in between two major access points in the city, it becomes obviously harder to make that argument. That's down the road, clearly.
Well, this is a question, Mr. Chairman, if I may, last question I'll ask, but that can be said the same way about Spain Park. I mean, it's a two-way to, I guess my point to be clear, so I think it'd bring some clarity to both sides of the table. Regardless of the fact how difficult it is, if that remains to be a private owned road by the school board, regardless of what happens here, public ties, they still have reserved the right to do the things they need to do. On the Buccaneer Drive side.
Past the intersection.
Past that intersection
Sure.
connection.
Sure.
But regardless of the fact, on the back end, we probably still need to have some form of control set up and communication dialogue in the event something has to be shut down. But I doubt they want to, regardless of the fact, lose their right to have a private road been private since they own the property to turn it into a complete public road.
But I think what Mr. Colvin's saying is if it becomes a public road use, then
To a
you can
point,
lose that, yeah.
That's
Well,
a
we
very
need to-
nuanced analysis. I mean, that's not something but I think what I'm really saying is that all of this, that I think it might be helpful to us and it's really a city decision, obviously, if the city builds roads, and do you want them to be public or private, or do you want them to be public or limited use, or is it wide open or not? Even the part that goes down by our bus barn, because that kind of affects the way it gets deeded. If we just deed it, if it's a public road, then obviously that means we have continued access to it. But if it's not, we just need to make sure that the deed indicates that we would have continued access to it. So that's really the reason I'm asking about that right of way, if that makes sense. 'Cause once you give away your property, then it's easier to deal with that on the front end than it is on the back end.
So is there?
Even though there's so much trust here, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But just for down the road to make sure that's clarified, it just might be helpful if that discussion takes place. That's all I'm saying.
You've heard the dialogue about probably public safety. The only other concern I think we would want to introduce is, and this would be a mutual benefit as well, with the investment in the sports complex and the investment specifically in these roads, we would want to be sure that we have the ability to use them as access points for major events.
Sure.
That's really a lot of the point of putting them in there. Is there language that you gentlemen could possibly include by 7:30 Tuesday morning that would codify what you've heard here today about ownership, protection of the school's interests, and being able to have a check valve there for what goes past their campus, public safety access, and the use of the roads for large public events at the sports complex? Is there language?
For us to keep this private and give you the,
Some type of a use agreement. You keep it, and then we have a use agreement where if it's controlled through some mutually agreed, however that needs to be worded, just so we know what's going on, so we don't find a gate one night when we're trying to empty 5,000 people out of the parking lot. Right. Not under this board, 20 years.
no, we're all talking about what if.
Yeah, well,
And
we have to
I've
think
lived in
about
the
it.
city long enough to see when the city government and the school district were at odds, like it was communist against capitalist. And that may happen 20 years, like when I'm gone. I guess we're looking forward to
That's what we have to
taking care of the facilities that's out there, the residents are there, the commercial, everybody. And it's still number one priority for us is taking care of those children, which carries over to you
Sure,
guys.
absolutely.
Alan, remind me, this road, the East Road, would traverse through our property, US Steel property, or is that, who all are landowners there?
US
Those
is
two.
the current landowner, and
Okay.
the thought process on the table is that they will sell all of that property to another purchaser who would then be involved with the city in the construction of that road to access for the
So
residential development.
So you're comfortable that if on our end we reach agreement, there's not going to be something unusual to happen, like we get stopped at a property line?
Right, I am. If the plan that's on the table proceeds to conclusion, I'm very comfortable with that. If the current 11th Amendment does not proceed the way it's constructed right now, then we don't know. And then that also goes back to Mr. Presley's questions earlier, and the road might not be built at all under those circumstances.
So do we need to also include in this redo by 7:30 Tuesday morning that this is contingent upon approval by full council for it taking place? If not, if it's not approved by full council, then this becomes void and we'll go through this process, or you guys will go through this process again if something else comes back up.
I think that I see an expression from wit.
No, I'm just thinking, I'm thinking about it in terms of a deed, you can't, it's hard to do that in terms of a deed, but.
Going back to what we were saying a minute ago, this still comes down to a deed issue.
But I think Philip and I can work through that as long as we understand what the city and the board want to do. And Philip assures me he understands that completely.
Let's talk.
I do think it's important how I make a proposal to this board. So I want to be very clear, because whatever way I put that proposal on the table, and you may very well want to work with me in terms of that language, to think about the fact that there's another landowner that may or may not, all this come to fruition, so.
We talked, I'm not caught up probably as well as Stephen and Craig. When we talk about extension of the East Road across US Steel property that hypothetically might be sold to a developer, I'm sure we're talking about a residential development.
Correct.
I'm sure we're talking about feeding more cars on this road. I'm sure we're talking about more houses, more children. The problem, it's like if that scenario takes place, all it does is exacerbate every other problem the school district's got in terms of capacity and traffic flow and everything else. And so, it's great to think, well, you guys, buy this property from US Steel and then turn it over, and subsequently the developer buys it, puts another 1,000 homes, whatever the number is. And we're faced with the same problem we've got right now in terms of capacity issues on the west side of Hoover. So I'm thinking, where's the incentive for us to allow situations to evolve that makes things worse than what we've got already on the table? That's
Let me clarify, you mean capacity in terms of school capacity or traffic?
Both.
Or both? Now my understanding is that all the capacity issues, and Dr. Murphy or Dr. Dobson can correct me on this if I'm wrong. My understanding is that all the projections for future capacity that have been presented to the court accommodate the thought process about this project. And there are so many pieces to this project, any one of them viewed in isolation might not be appealing on its own merits, but when taken together, for example, the 140 acres along the Cahaba presents phenomenal opportunities opportunities for Hoover City Schools that don't exist today. So let's go to traffic for a minute in Trace Crossings. There was a traffic problem in Trace Crossings, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? It exists this morning, and it exists whether this plan is approved or not. The traffic solution to punch out of Trace Crossings in another way is something that I think the city understands has to happen, with or without this plan. And when I say plan, I don't mean the road, I mean the master plan. So we all have a traffic challenge in Trace Crossings, no doubt. I think the school capacity issue, my understanding is, has been factored into this. But what we're trying to do is use interior circulation there. So I guess the benefit would be, right now, every car that goes in and out of Hoover High School clearly goes through Learning Lane and State and Trace. And if we are able to enact this master plan, you have 3 routes in and out of Hoover High School. Not any more routes in and out of Trace Crossings yet, but we know that has to happen as well.
Well, I don't know if this parcel of land that you still owns that you guys are proposing to purchase for the road and develop is included in the rezoning plan or not. I have no clue. And as far as as far as the traffic flow and all that, I think the residents of the city are gonna dictate to you guys what they feel about that.
And they have.
It's not really, yeah, it's not really an issue. It's an issue for us because we have to have access in and out of that school at critical times of the day, particularly for buses. But when you get back down to the development piece of it, just allow this whole road to go and all of a sudden you've got this piece of land up there become extremely valuable now for development purposes. You know, at some point, the elephant in the room is we're gonna have to address how we're gonna accommodate additional students in a limited capacity environment on the west side of Hoover. And that ought to be part and parcel of, future development potential associated with this road, in my opinion.
I think we have some thoughts about that fall under B on this morning's agenda.
And Ron Dotson has just joined us, so Dr. Dotson, thank you for coming in. To address the capacity issue, with the assumption that there are not additional homes being built along the east road, but if there are, those are homes that are being built, brought up from south of Stadium Trace, we have included those numbers. So if we're not talking about new residents, just a shifting or a moving, we have indeed taken those into consideration.
You mentioned the Cahaba River, the benefits to the school district. I don't know, but I would suppose that property along the Cahaba River is on the floodplain and it's not buildable to begin with. So putting a park there and all that, it is great and wonderful, and we appreciate the opportunity to do whatever plans are to do that. But to say it's a benefit to the school district is, you can't do anything else with it, I would guess. But that aside, it's just a capacity thing that we've all got to deal with because that's the crux of the issue facing everybody in this room, and then some. And it's not gonna happen tomorrow, it may not happen next year, besides the portable going to Deer Valley, but it's coming.
Mr. President, if I may, and I understand totally what Ms. Cooper is saying. As far as the road itself, I would ask that the school board, I don't know your plan as far as the deed process, but if you remain your privatization of that road up front, I'll ask you to kind of, if this goes through, consider making that public only on the eastbound, only because when you talk about maintenance, and given none of us is here, you get into the fighting game, we're gonna repave that road and up to that point, and y'all gotta take care of that portion right there, plus the utilities and everything else in that road. So for continuation, maintenance plan and ownership in order to make sure that's taken care of, that from a logistics standpoint, that makes sense to me on that standpoint. But I get where your point where you stand, but again, know that.
But let me just say this about that, for me on a personal note. This whole development thing, no matter where it is in Western Hoover or anywhere in Hoover, it's whatever's in the best interest of the city. And you guys are working on that master plan, which is great. I think what I would like to see the position I'd like to see the city in is have absolutely the ability to develop whatever is best in the city, no matter what. And again, it's just the crux of this whole capacity issue. So if we could ever figure out a way to start now to solve the expected capacity issues that are gonna have, we're gonna really have to spend big money out here in the next 3 to 5 years. If we could deal with that incrementally and have that resolved, so the city can do whatever the city wants to do the best for all residents and not worry about it. If you want to develop residential, develop residential. If you want commercial, why, do it. But you gotta have a place to put these kids.
Well, to your point, Mr. Cooper, that's, I think we're committed, and again, but you wanna kind of have discussion. We've been talking about it, but it's time to kind of, put gas in the tank, start driving the car type of approach. And I get it. I think we're gonna, here soon with the mayor and the council, there's a mayor working on a master plan for the city to have enough information to, come and start having those discussions with the school board. I know we've already started some preliminary discussions about the needs of the school system as far as capacity itself. I know some will be addressed, when the courts rule on it from that perspective, but it's, according to Mr. Presley, current president, in a 3-year period, there's gonna be some needs as far as with the high school, as far as addition. So I think on your point, you wanna kind of see some things moving along as far as having a clear vision on what are we gonna do as far as the school system with more people coming into the school. So I get that, but we need to probably have some dialogue, and I think we're gonna get there
It's
sooner or
sad,
later.
but we're all in this thing together, is the thing. So going full circle, that'd be my only apprehension about, the extension of this road is the amount of property for future development that's not addressed, not considered yet in terms of school capacity.
Mr. Cooper, I think
But
this,
anyway.
I think this land, yes, currently not included in our capacity, but the plan was to remove housing units from a piece of property that is included in our projections and move them to here.
That's correct. All of the units that are contained in this 11th Amendment are transfer units from an area that's already been planned. That's right. Your point is extremely well taken, and that's something we actually asked if we could discuss while we're here together this
Yeah,
morning.
it's a great discussion because I think for once, the clarity of the issue is there and it's all teed up, from a political perspective, from a parent, family perspective. Everybody kind of gets what the situation is and look at us to resolve it.
I shared this with our board at our last board meeting, so I'll share it now that we have council and mayor at the table with us also. Dr. Dotson and I have spent the last couple of days sitting down with 3 architectural firms to talk about the what ifs. What if we need to build a new high school? What might that size be? Would that be more of a magnet concept school, or would that be a school that would have athletics and all those fields? So we've asked 3 architectural firms to look at a high school, building a high school. We're thinking maybe something substantially smaller than Spain Park Hoover High School, a 1,200, for example, student high school, with athletic facilities, without athletic facilities. We've asked the 3 architectural firms to look at Hoover High School for an additional wing. Right now, we need additional space, but certainly with growth, we're going to need additional space there. So we've asked those architectural firms to look at a wing to Hoover High School as a possible solution. And so I'm pleased to tell you that we should, as a school district, begin to be able to have a conversation with you all that is much more definitive about option A, an option B, an option C, what might real costs look like associated with those. But there's obviously no doubt, as the city continues to grow, and nobody's intent to stymie that we're going to have additional capacity for students. I've heard lots of outcry already from our community as it relates to moving a mobile unit to Deer Valley. No one wants to see a mobile unit sitting right in the front of the school. And yet it is the evidence that we've talked about from the time I've come into the school district about our need for rezoning for 2 reasons. One being the capacity that we're already facing in some of our schools, and the other being that of the unitary status conversation, the need for rezoning. So I do want all of you to know that we're thinking forward, working forward, and being very thoughtful about what might be next steps for us as growth continues to happen.
Remind me, please, what is the formula for, new houses, children, what's the,
We typically use 0.41 for multifamily, 0.37 for single family residence.
say that one more time, I'm sorry.
0.41 for multifamily, 0.37 for single family residence.
Following in on Dr. Murphy's about the new facility, just so everyone will know, based on current state of Alabama requirements, for a middle or high school, we have to have 45 acres of land plus 1 acre of land for every 1,000 students. So based on a 1,200 student population, high school, you're looking at a 57 acre tract of land. For a elementary school, that drops to 30 acres plus 1 acre for every 1,000. I think that's right.
Hundreds.
What does that?
Hundreds.
That's right. That's right. I'm sorry.
Your math was correct.
I'm sorry. So we're looking at, 42 acres for an elementary school, and we're looking at 57 acres for a high school.
And the problem as we've been looking, as we've thought forward, is we're such a location in the event we need to construct the school.
Could we go back and kind of button up the land request if we could? And I think the mayor wanted to have an opportunity to express his philosophy on the very issues that we're talking about, but I hate to drift too far away from what we have to try to get done.
Sure.
Is that acceptable?
Absolutely.
I think what I'm hearing is that we will wait for the approval from Alabama Power. Well, we don't know if that'll happen by Tuesday morning or not.
We're pushing.
For the relocation of the power line to be located on the property line between the schools and the city, as presented on your last drawing. And then, Mr. Coleman, I'm gonna have to turn it over to you on this road thing. I'm confused on.
I think what we can probably do, if it's acceptable to the city, would be to approve some sort of, we can keep it a little, keep a little flexibility there for the form of what I'll call a conveyance, be it a public, private, whatever, but I think we can go ahead and, because you guys need the approval to get moving, correct? To go ahead and approve the concepts and then authorize the superintendent or the board president or in conjunction with council to sort of work out the form for that. And I know that sounds a bit like kicking the can down the road, but what it does, instead of requiring us to come up with what can be sort of complicated legal documents that may or may not suit the purposes, it allows us to go ahead and say, hey, here's what we're doing. We're gonna approve something that permits the city to construct roads in the areas shown and to use those for internal access purposes or whatever the language we come up with is. And then the form of whether it be a statutory warranty deed, where we actually deed the property, whether we do an easement, whether we give a right of way, whether there be some sort of use agreement. That's something that then perhaps we can work on once we figure out a little more exactly how all that goes together from the city's perspective. I think we have a pretty good idea of what the school board wants in terms of retain control of the roads, but maybe the city needs to consider what it's heard today and figure, okay, well, how does this sort of work into what we have planned out there, and how can we make it all work together? Does that make sense?
Our attorney's nodding the affirmative, so I think that makes sense.
He and I can work, we'll meet after this and we'll come up with an approach that hopefully will serve everyone's.
I think that allows us to move on our timeline.
As long as we let you move on your timeline, I'm hearing that's what you
We
need.
appreciate it.
You need something Tuesday so you can get going.
So But we still won't start or do any construction on this east road until we know about this other piece. So I'm trying to give Mr. Bradford, Mr. Hobson, as much notice as we can as to, before anything happens down here, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
The
Thank you.
East Road construction is further down our timeline.
Well, and what temporary measures are in place or do they even need to have any when this starts for transportation as far as when that, parking, et cetera, because they're gonna be sort of put out for a while, I'm assuming.
Well, perhaps we can stage that, Ms. Baumann, where the parking lot in the back is done first.
Prior,
And
okay.
gets that done, and that way, then everything can move to that and the front of the building. While it will be under construction, it will not block anything.
And that parking lot, I know we've talked about baseball, is that something that baseball will be able to use as well, or? Not for, okay.
I think that's something that we'll have to look
That'll
at
be
as a
something
separate matter.
separate, okay.
And just for our purposes for a school district, we actually talked a little bit yesterday, went out and looked at the site with Tracy, and there may be some additional work we want to do because we have extreme limitation for parking for baseball. And we were kind of hoping to use this as a utility parking lot, not only to support transportation, but also to support after-school baseball. Can't really locate it where we thought we might, but at some point in our capital outlay plan, board members, we may come back with some requests to extend that in some way to support parking.
Because currently, if we have a baseball game, especially if it happens to be a Spain Park, Vestavia, Mountain Brook, both sides of Buccaneer Drive, almost all the way up to where Learning Lane intersects it, are parked on both sides. And if we make this a real road, that's gonna be an issue, that we don't need to have all those cars on there, so. Okay, everybody good with the land discussion? Can we move on to item B on our agenda? All right, Dr. Murphy, what, item B is other, so I'm a little bit scared here what this might be.
Again, just, we wanted to have an opportunity to let the city share some thoughts with us. We may have other things that we all wanted to talk about. We weren't exactly sure what all might fall under other. I did talk to Alan, and I know that we wanted to talk about developments. And so, at least for the first point, under other, let me ask Alan and the mayor to share with us.
I'm gonna defer to the mayor to talk about larger things.
Well, good morning. Thank y'all for having us, and we appreciate the opportunity to bring these issues to the table with, not to further discussion on the roads, but we see a great deal of benefit for the city of Hoover schools and for the city of Hoover. Who, call me naive, I look at us as one, but in working in the same direction. So with that said, I look forward to seeing what two attorneys are going to plan out for us in the next few days. In terms of annexation, the history of annexation in the last 8 or 12 years has really not been a whole lot of discussion about it. They didn't have many annexation committee meetings. I don't remember any taking place until maybe the last 2 or 3 years. So as a group, we have an annexation committee at the city of Hoover, and they are active and they're looking. They're active in terms of, we do have requests from individuals and developers and other entities to annex into our city, which is a really good thing to think that people want to continue to come into our city, and we appreciate that. And so the mayor cannot annex those parcels. He can only recommend, support it, and move it on to the annexation committee, who again votes it in or out of that committee to the full council to look at. So that's essentially how it works. Now, we're not in the business right now of entertaining any large tract annexations where multiple homes will be brought into our city. So we know that that can't happen. Have we been asked? Certainly we have. And the one that I know of in particular, my first call was actually to Dr. Murphy. We talked about it in terms of what it would mean to the city, but it really never got any wings. It never did make sense. And so that's the only one that I know of. But there are other opportunities that we need to look at, and we should consider that that will come along, and that we need to look at that will be beneficial to us in terms of giving us control of an area. Because as Hoover developed, it's like Swiss cheese. There are lots and lots of holes out there. Some are really big that if brought in could mean potential large-scale development. Some are not so big, but the position in the city is we really need control of that. And it's been difficult for us to get control. So we're looking at places like that. We're not actively going out and seeking that, but if these people come to us and we get an opportunity to look at it, we bring it before the committee and let it pass or fail on its own merits. But we do have a number of homes throughout our city that are totally surrounded by Hoover. They may be individual homes, and in the past, they were not even considered. Well, I don't think that's right. I think we ought to look at them in terms of public safety, picking up the garbage, 911, just the overall logistics that we have to deal with. It makes sense to bring those single-family homes into the city if they want to come. We're not recruiting. If they want to come in, we look at it, we send it to the committee, and it passes or fails on its own merit. So I just want to dispel any, I don't know if they're rumors or what. We have no intention of bringing in hundreds of homes, 50 homes, 30 homes that would impact our schools. The last annexation that is moving forward is an area around Pat Chapel. And the only reason I think that's got any wings is because it's a 55 plus community, and therefore it would have no impact on our school system. But the position where this particular parcel is in our city, a few years ago, caused a lot of heartburn because of the development. It was unincorporated, and these folks wanted to come in here and put just a totally unacceptable development in there. And we really had no control. It's not in our city. And we were able to, to fight it down. I think probably money, the fact that there wasn't money available to do a lot of this probably killed it more than anything. So we look at things like that. But I just want to say that my philosophy, I ran on this, that the schools are the cornerstone of our community. I've said that all along. And it's important that we have cooperation. And again, I'll say it, I'm naive. We have a school board, we have a library board, we have a park and recreation board, but they're all the city of Hoover as far as I'm concerned. And we all have to push in the same direction and work together. And the first thing I did when I came into office is I set up a dialogue with Dr. Murphy. And we meet once a month. And the things that she's talked about today on the schools, the size of the school, where they need to go, I've heard all of that. We've talked about that. And we all know, these councilmen that are sitting here as well, we all know that we need to start. You've already started. We all know that there's a need for more schools in our city. So how do we get there? And we're going to work hand in hand with each of them to reach that goal. So With that said, I really don't have anything else to say about it, other than to calm, if there are nerves that are touched a bit about annexation, there are no plans for any annexations that are gonna impact our schools.
I'll just say the onesie, twosies add up over time.
Well,
But
yeah,
we've got such a great community. The access to Homewood now is kind of priced out. Access to First Aid is priced out. Mountain Brook's priced out. And so we are very, very desirable, and everybody who's got unincorporated property or single family dwellings contiguous to other Hoover property are gonna want to get. And that's great. But as long as we deal with the thing that brings them here to begin with, in large part, and that's the school capacity issue.
And I
That's
understand
preaching the
that.
choir, you got that.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, we're gonna get there.
These ones and twosies are not, it's not like they're gonna come in overnight. You're talking about years to do this. And just because they wanna come in, they still have to go before the committee. And prove that it's worthwhile coming in. And,
But as people like myself move to the 42-unit, 55-year-old and whatever community, my house is sold to a young couple now who's got kids feeding into Green Valley. It's a great problem to have, so it makes such a vibrant community, and finally, you guys got it. And so together, I think we're gonna be great in solving that.
thank you, thank you for saying that.
If I could add, Councilman Posey chairs the annexation committee. He had a work conflict, but he did ask me to share with you this morning.
Where do you work?
He does not intend to hold any annexation committee meetings on any residential annexation, until any earlier than September. And he wanted me to also share that even that could be pushed off. That's the earliest that he would entertain. And that was directly an effort to allow the court to hopefully rule and complete their process, and nobody wants it more than you guys do. But he wanted me to specifically share that with you. Now, commercial annexation, obviously a completely different story. We all want that. If you know of any that wanna come in, please call me, let me know. But for residential, annexation, even the individual ones that the mayor spoke of, he intends not to really entertain those at all until September, and each one of those will be done with a conversation. The mayor mentioned rumors. A lot of our job is rumor control with 5 board members, 7 council members, 87,000 residents. Sometimes, hey, they're talking to so-and-so gets turned into, hey, they're about to bring 1,500 houses in, and that's a long road to travel. So we're in constant communication, the mayor, Dr. Murphy, and I. We have Dr. Dobson's spreadsheet. We have that. So when we have developers, we're continually approached by people. The Good Idea Ferry is alive and well in Hoover. People want to be here, and they want to do things here. But we have that spreadsheet. And so before we meet on a potential piece of property, we go into that meeting armed with school impact numbers. And then we follow up with at least a text message, if not a phone call to Dr. Murphy to say, here's what we've been approached with, we've sent it back to the drawing board, or here's what we think about the proposal. So there's a vibrant dialogue.
And people look to me because I'm quick to pull the trigger on what I think and feel. So, really?
Wow.
Don't think it's about, don't think I'm against this, because I tell you, it is remarkable that everybody understands the big picture, and everybody's beginning to work towards the solutions for everything, be it sports complex or school capacity issues. So we're gonna solve the issue together, and it's unprecedented in my tenure here on the board. We have this opportunity, so thank you guys for even being, it's the first time we've done this in forever, we've tried for years.
Well, and not that I want to contribute to Love Fest here, but I do need to say how very, very refreshing for me to get a text, to get an email, to get a phone call. Mayor shot me something this morning on a totally different, not what we're at the table discussing, but just that engagement. If I need the mayor, I can get him. I need Alan Rice or Tim Westhoven. It really is terrific. I just have to say to you in this public forum how delighted I am for the relationship. Do we agree every day? No. There are days that we'll agree to disagree, And these gentlemen don't mind sharing with me straight up. I think they'll respond to you that I don't mind shooting pretty straight up. And so that's what we needed, and I'm just grateful. Thank you for that.
Playing off your rumor comment, Mr. Rice, there has been rumor that the school board is interested in evicting or kicking out the current tenant at the Old Bluff Park School. That is not the case whatsoever. They are a vital part of what Bluff Park is all about, and we're glad to have them there. I think the concerns from this board is that the way the current verbal agreement is needs to be addressed. And I know there's some work going on between our attorneys on that, because there's some things up there that need to change as far as the school board is concerned. Has nothing to do with removing anybody that's up there, but it has to do with, there's just some things that need to change as we move forward. So I know there's been concerns about, we're wanting to get rid of what's going on up there, and as you say, let's put that to ease right now. That's not the case.
I have not heard that, to be perfectly honest with you.
I think Dr. Murphy will
You're the only
confirm
one.
that. She's got
I've
multiple
said this many
emails.
times too, as the mayor, I'm often the last one to hear that.
Yeah.
But that's all right. I've not heard that, especially from Dr. Murphy. And I don't think it's moving quite as quickly as everyone would like. But there's been a lot of other issues that really have priority on them. But I think now we're moving in the right direction again. We've given these guys way too much work, but that's what it amounts to. And they're working on it, and I think we'll, I think I sent you a text on it 2 or 3 or 4 days ago about how slowly it was moving, but we're addressing it. And we'll get everyone together and see if we can get a solution. I know you don't want to kick them out. It's a very valuable asset that we all have.
And if I just could add to that, please let me reiterate from the superintendent's seat, no interest in evicting any of the individuals that's associated with the artist on the bluff, but the school district simply can't be encumbered with cost. We're all being thoughtful about our taxpayers' money. We're being thoughtful and savvy as it relates to how we use money, and so the school district simply can't be encumbered with those costs, and that's the only point that has brought us to this discussion. I understand that we and Philip are working together, and no, it doesn't seem to happen fast enough, but I also get you're not just focused on one element of our work, but thank you for bringing that up, because that has been a rumor that has just continued to circulate. I have received emails of, why are you doing this to us, and what is this about, and how dare you? And that's just not accurate perception on the part of any individuals. That's not the intent.
And that's a grand example of a dialogue is initiated about we need to legitimize the arrangement, and then all of a sudden it becomes wholesale change and they're gonna do this thing. Which, it gets away from us quickly. We just have to continually communicate to combat that from happening.
Yes, sir, Mr. Lyon.
May I go back to the annexation topic, add something if you don't mind to?
Yes, sir.
I agree with everything the mayor said, and I appreciate the way he expressed that. I had expressed some concerns in our annexation meeting and the council about a couple of these properties that we brought in, because it was a change in direction that the city had been in since 2003 when we brought in the Ross Bridge property. My concern then, and my concern today remains that opening these gates, if you will, to the possibility of expanding the footprint of Hoover, not cleaning up pockets, as the mayor adequately described, but expanding the footprint is dangerous. And not that I'm prophetic, but I don't know if you're aware of what happened, but we brought in one. You know what happened the next week? 10 neighbors showed up and said, we want him too. So early these onesies and twosies become tensies and twinniesies really quickly.
So that's the danger in doing what the council did. And at least by approving one, 10 more came. And by the time September rolls around, who knows how big that basket will be. So that's my concern about going out.
And to that comment, Mr. President, I think, Mr. Kirkhope is trying to clearly define what the mayor, what that means too, because as the mayor said, you know, you got small pockets, you have large pockets within the umbrella of, that surrounds Hoover. And, so clearly defining how that, works out, what we look at, what is approved is probably going to be a key thing. So I'm glad he's willing to wait till September and kind of set up a process, for that, that whole plan.
Yes, sir, Ms. Schultz.
Regarding the Artists on the Bluff facility, I appreciate that the verbal agreement that was put into place several years ago is gonna come be more formalized. I don't know if you're aware of it, but the restaurant that is in there right now is leaving either June 1st or July 1st. They are not renewing their lease. So that will bring up the possibility of something else going in. And if I know that was a matter of contention in the past. Perhaps if the facility itself could be brought into the dialogue, since they're an entity in their own, that would probably help out the matter if there is any type of contention in there, because there's so many entities involved, but at times they have not spoken to one another. There was no dialogue. And if dialogue can be established with all the parties, I think that would help out quite a bit.
I believe we have Artists on the Bluff, the Hoover Historical Society, Capers. Is there another group?
Well, Capers is leasing from Artists on the Bluff. So Capers is leaving. They've closed ended their lease.
And that's part of the problem.
Right.
That's the school district's property. And you have an entity who's paying someone who has our facility for use while we pay the utilities. So just to
And
put the
you're-
matter on the table.
Right, you're exactly right.
And that's
And
not something that as your superintendent, I'm prepared to continue to do.
Right, and I think where what I think was missing in the past was dialogue with everybody. Everybody said, okay, here is a verbal agreement, but there was nothing ever.
No, we must remove ourselves from the verbal agreement. We're gonna clearly need to articulate that in appropriate legal language. But this school district has to have a different setup than currently exists.
I agree.
Any other comments? Now, I want to thank everybody for being here. I do want to say that there is one rumor out there that is absolute fact, and that is this is my last Friday. I'm down to 6 days, and that is not a rumor.
And one more meeting.
And one more meeting. Again, thank you guys for being here, and we will now close our meeting. Ms. Simmons, if you will take care of the, Dr. Simmons, sorry, if you'll take care of the live stream for us, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Keep it.